Our heads are big satellite dishes. They receive and they transmit frequencies. Every spirit has a frequency that they keep throughout all their lifetimes. Every angel has its own frequency. We're all being guided. It's just a matter of tuning in to that guidance. And how we do that is we raise our vibrational level. Think of, you want to listen to country music, you're on 102.5. You want to listen to classical music, you change it to 94.7. Different frequency. Those numbers are megahertz for a frequency. Same thing with any spirit. And I think the fun thing about this too, Lucas, is that you can talk to anybody you want, whether they're attached to a body or not. You can talk to any spirit that's deceased, whether you knew them or not, is irrelevant. You just think of them, attention, intention. You think of them, that tunes your satellite dish head to their frequency, and you're off to the races.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the New Age Sage podcast. I'm with my guest today, Julie Ryan, and in investigating your biography, it seems like you are a woman of severely limitless talents, including inventor, psychic, medical, intuitive, amazing spiritual teacher. So I want to begin with just kind of you describing what your mission here is on this beautiful planet and what kind of gifts you were given, and just give us an insight into the workings of your mind a bit before we start.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, I'm an inventor. First of all, I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Oh, me too.
Thank you so much. This is fabulous. Your studio is just beautiful. So what an honor to be here with you.
Me too. My pleasure.
And I am an inventor of surgical devices sold throughout the world and former manufacturer of surgical devices. And I am an entrepreneur. I have founded 9 companies in 5 industries. And now I'm a medical intuitive and psychic medium. So I'm a businesswoman who learned how to do woo-woo, and I'm a buffet of psychicness.
Awesome. So
how's that?
Often for people who are very rational and intellectual and operate in that domain, it takes a lot to shift them towards the esoteric and the spiritual. So what sparked your shift? What led you to move from that world and also simply hold on to it, but then also have an openness to the divine?
So my girlfriend gave me a book called Anatomy of the Spirit about 30 years ago. And it's by a woman named Carolyn Mace, who called herself a medical intuitive. And I'd never heard that term before. And I wanted to know more because I'd been involved in the medical supply business, helping people heal with products and devices and helping the doctors help people and that kind of thing. Never on the pharmaceutical side, just on that supply side. And back then we didn't have the internet yet. So I did the old-fashioned thing, Lucas, and I went to a bookstore. And I wanted to see what else they had. And I found a book called Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan, who's a former NASA physicist who parlayed very complex quantum physics, basically, into understandable English for the non-scientific mind. That would be me. Yeah. And she talked about using energy and frequencies to help people heal. And I wanted to know more. And so I called her school, which at the time was on Long Island. And I said, do you guys have anybody in my area teaching this stuff? And they said, yeah, we do. We have a graduate. And so I studied with that woman for 6 years. She's still in my life. She's in her 80s now. I get to talk to her usually about once a month. And that's how I got started into this. I didn't talk to spirits. I laugh. I say I didn't have dead people chasing me as a child. Or if I did, I wouldn't have known what to do with that. And that's how this all began 30 years ago. And at the time, it was interesting because people would say to me, well, why are you doing this? And I'd say, I don't know. And I'd say, well, what are you going to do with it? Again, I'd say, I have no idea. And then fast forward, sold several of my companies, my main one, my surgical device manufacturing company. And I thought, all right, what am I going to do now? And that's how this all started.
Let's dive into this topic now. Do you feel like this was within your soul's blueprint, your pre-incarnation old decision to be this person you are? So do you feel like that was you following this path was already written in the stars at some point in time?
I do, for a couple of reasons. First of all, when I'm working with people, most of the work I do is medical. People come to me when they've seen multiple doctors and had multiple treatment programs, and they still have the same symptoms.
Yep.
And so they come to me to find out really what's the root cause. And I'm like a human MRI. I can see inside people's bodies when I have my abilities turned on and off. It's like a switch. I can turn it on instantly. So the thing about this is that all that training in the medical supply industry and spending a lot of time in surgery, developing products, testing prototypes, things like that, gave me a trajectory that led me to the healing that I do now energetically. And I believe what I do, Lucas, is complementary to Eastern and Western medicine and other medical modalities as we know them. It's all part of the healing equation. And so, yes, I do believe that that was part of my trajectory. Furthermore, on my show, I asked Julie Ryan's show last summer, I had a guy who did a hypnotism thing with me, regressed me with hypnosis to find out where this healing interest came from me. Because I didn't want to do the traditional, let's go to medical school and all of that.
Yeah, of course.
But I wanted to be involved in medical stuff ever since I was in college.
Yeah.
And probably even before that. As a kid, I was a candy striper. That's a kid volunteer in a hospital. Have you ever heard that name before, the candy striper?
No, I haven't.
Have you ever been in a hospital with somebody that's got, like a woman has one of those pink, kind of like pink jackets
No, but
on?
I've seen it on TV, I think.
Yeah. So candy stripers used to be girls that would volunteer in the hospital. And so I did that as a kid. So I guess I was interested in it long before college. And when Simon Bown is his name, when he regressed me, we found that I was, energized with healing abilities 500 billion light years ago on a star in a different galaxy far, far away, which blew my mind, Lucas. I was like, what? And so I think that's where it started. So I think this is another incarnation of exploring it in today's climate.
I bring that up because the question I ask myself, I don't know the answer to, that maybe you do, is that since the big events, I believe, are to some extent pre-programmed by our spirit or higher self, to what extent do we have free will once we're incarnated here? Like what decisions can we actually make? I don't know the answer to that. Like I did a psychedelic trip once where I saw my life has already happened. All the big events already happened. It was all done. Yeah. And I came back and I was like, but okay, to what extent do I have free will if all the things that are going to happen that's big have happened already? What's your answer to that? Like how does one deal with that
Great question.
Deep, big question?
Great question. It's been my experience that it's, and working with tens of thousands of people from all over the world, is that we come in with a basic script. And then our free will is, how do we explore that script? Like, you want to come in as a teacher. I wanted to come in as something that had to do with spirituality and health. Well, how is that going to develop? That's where the free will comes in. And we're led by our emotion. I always say emotion is our internal GPS system coming in from spirit. How does something feel? If it's interesting, if it's fun, if you want to know more, you take a step. An analogy for this, Lucas, may be you think of the play Hamlet. Hamlet, how many times has that been performed since Shakespeare wrote it in 1602? Who knows? But basic script, different perspective. Where was it performed? When? In what language? Inside, outside? Who were the actors? Who was the producer? Who was the set designer? All that kind of stuff. Different perspective, different interpretation of the same script. And that's how I believe our free will comes in. We come in with something we want to explore. How we explore that is where free will comes in. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Okay.
My next question is to what extent is it possible to sabotage our own destiny? No. Okay, explain that, please.
Because there are no mistakes in life. It's all part of the learning curve. It's all part of the experience. What I've heard from Spirit a bazillion times is there's no right, there's no wrong, there's no good, there's no bad in the spirit world. It's just an experience. Now, certainly we have right and wrong, good and bad here on earth because we have to. We can't have people walking around killing each other all the time, or none of us would have any experiences that would expand our spirit, our soul. Spirit and soul are interchangeable. I use the word spirit because it feels less religious to me. Soul being raised Catholic, that's more of a religious feel to me. It's the same thing. So use whatever suits you. But we have the ability then to explore and experience things. And when you have a goal and you are on the path to achieve that goal, it's rarely in the way that you think it's going to unfold. And most of the time you'll still get there, but sometimes it's through a circuitous route to get to that goal. But it's all part of the experience. So I don't believe there are any mistakes. I don't believe we can get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all just part of the human experience of what our soul chooses to explore in this lifetime.
And is that choice also reflected in each person's individual personality? Is the personality we choose in this dimension also part of that choice?
I think it is, and I think we can modify that personality. Once we know better, we do better. So somebody who's just a brat as a kid, learns perhaps that, well, my life's going to be more pleasant if I'm kind to the people around me, if I enjoy them more, if I do things for them, if I give them love. And our personalities develop as we mature. I believe that a child with a personality doesn't mean they're going to be an adult with the same personality. Mm-hmm. I think it all unfolds based, again, on what our spirit wants to explore and experience in this lifetime.
Another complicated question. Sorry.
Okay. No, I love them.
I'm just learning so much from you. I have
no,
these
I
questions
love them. Bring it on.
If someone is destined to a more quote unquote painful life due to negative karma, is there a way to liberate themselves from that? If you're destined to a quote unquote life of more suffering, is there a way to alleviate that, to step away from that, right? Because my curiosity goes to, let's say someone has a dream of being a pop singer, but that just might not, it's not going to happen. How does that person deal with that, per se?
Well, again, it's all a very basic script. Mm-hmm. And karma, to me, because this has been explained to me bazillions of times mm-hmm. from spirit, is not what most of us in the Western world believe it is. Like, you kill somebody in a past life and you're just screwed mm-hmm. in your future life, maybe lifetimes. That's not how it works. It's not a good or bad, right or wrong, as I mentioned before. It's let's explore it from a different perspective. Karma is we're going to bring part of a semblance of that basic script forward into this new lifetime. We're going to use our free will to see how we're going to transverse or traverse mm-hmm. this lifetime while we're exploring that script, back to the Hamlet perspective.
Okay.
And so certainly we all have things that it's kind of like when you're a little kid and you put your hand on something hot and you get burned. Well, that's not your destiny for the rest of your life. You're going to stay away from hot things because you don't want to get burned again. So I believe that we can change and mold. And furthermore, older people especially are ones who have had a lot of life experience. And you'll hear people say, well, they're way calmer now than they were when they were at 65. They're way calmer than they were when they were 30, or they're 90. And they seem to have so much wisdom because they've explored and experienced a lot of things. So no, I don't think we're stuck in the mud with something called karma that, you're just out of luck if you do something in one life that is going to come back and bite you in the rear end in a future life.
How can one use the information you're presenting, specifically the basic story, to have more faith, to trust that there is some divine intelligence to our path? Because I think so much of my suffering has been bred by using fear to not believe in my success, like using evidence in the present moment, such as a result I didn't want occurring. My ego then uses that to create a belief that these things aren't going to happen for me. So how can one use the information of pre-programmed intelligence and guidance to have more faith in their dreams and their path in this plane?
Well, we're all being guided. It's just a matter of tuning in to that guidance. And how we do that is we raise our vibrational level. Because when we're in fear, and any thought that feels badly, back to that internal GPS is our emotion. So if we have a thought that feels badly, it's always based in fear. Anger, jealousy, boredom, shame, grief, whatever. If it feels bad, it's always based in fear. The key is it a real fear or a fake fear?
Mm-hmm.
A real fear is called a rational fear. Something's going to harm you or kill you, change the conditions before it does. A fake fear is called an irrational fear. And it's not going to harm you or kill you. It just feels like it is.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're in fear, the body doesn't know any difference between a real fear and a fake fear. It goes into fight or flight. The blood drains from our brain, goes to our heart and our extremities so we can run away quickly. We lose clarity. And also our cortisol levels go up, our norepinephrine levels go up, so we're causing stress. And that's when we go into the black hole of thoughts of, oh, if I'm late for this appointment, then I'm not going to get in again for another 9 months. And if I don't get in to see this doctor, then maybe I'm really sick. And then I might lose my job and might not be able to support myself. And then I'm going to die homeless and starving on the street.
Yeah.
And that's where our minds go.
Yeah.
And you want to go, really? Probably not. So what we want to do is we want to nip that in the bud. And here's how you do it, Lucas. You just ask yourself in your head, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? It's a yes or no answer. I call this the 2-minute rule. If the answer is yes, get out of the road before the truck's going to run you over because I can harm you or kill you. If you're running late for an appointment and you ask, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes if I'm going to be late for this appointment? The answer is going to be no. What that does is it keeps you out of fight or flight. And by staying out of fight or flight, you can think clearly. On brain scans of somebody that's in fight or flight, all the frontal lobes are dark. They're not working. And so it's a physiological response to fear. If it's a fear that's going to hurt you or kill you, change the conditions. 99.9% of the thoughts we feel that feel badly, the thoughts we have that feel badly are fake. They're not real. They're not fear.
At what point in this process, my concern goes to, when is it avoidance? When have we dipped too far? Is there wisdom? Can you learn what you have to learn without having to dip deep into the fear, the anger, the shame? My question is there ever a pattern of avoidance in those feelings? Or is that avoidance actually evidence for evolution? Like, do we actually have to dip into these negative emotions to clear them, to ascend?
No.
Okay, why not?
No, that's what the 2-minute rule is all about. When Spirit downloaded that into my head, I thought, oh, this is a game changer. Because you can use it in any situation. You can use it unlimited times a day. It's free and it's convenient. It works anywhere your brain is, and your brain's usually with you wherever you are.
Okay.
So it's convenient. So what that does is we can train our brains to stay out of fear, unless it's a rational fear. And if we can do that, we're not going to be slowed down or stymied by a false fear that's causing us to go into fight or flight that's paralyzing us. So I think that's all part of the learning curve too.
I think so many people, as you mentioned, and when I've listened to past podcasts, of your work, a core component of incarnating here is to create and express yourself. But so much of that creation in today's world, artistically, is a reflection of people's suffering and pain. How can one? Do you think that's a useful thing to do? And if it's not useful, how can someone create from a place of love and light versus having to use suffering and darkness to create art per se?
Well, I think the whole suffering thing is what that person's spirit is choosing to explore at the moment. And I'm certainly not a licensed psychotherapist. I'm not a professional psychotherapist. But here's a layperson's view of that is when people are in pain and suffering, sometimes they can identify with that. Yeah. And it feels comfortable because it's familiar. And so they are benefiting from that in some way. And again, there's no right or wrong in the spirit world. It's just an experience. So if somebody's going through something that we would perceive as a human as being horrific, what I've heard a bazillion times from spirit is they're in non-physical, what I call heaven, going, cool. what's Lucas going to create out of this?
Mhm.
How's he going to get out of this? What new things are going to come? How's that going to benefit his life? Because we need to know what we don't want in order to create what we do want. So there's a purpose for that. A lot of people call that duality. You got to know what you don't want in order to create what you do want. So it's benefiting somebody in some way when they do it, even if it's just, my life's been so awful my whole life. It's all I know, and it's what's familiar.
I think maybe I'm noticing here my own addiction to my own negative beliefs and suffering. That's something I have to
2-minute rule, man.
transcend.
It will enhance your life in every area. You will be amazed. You make it a habit. I have a habit of it. I've been doing it for years since Spirit downloaded it into my head. And as soon as I have a negative emotion, my brain immediately goes into, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? And then it's always a fake fear. And then I'll laugh a lot of the time and I'll say, okay, Ryan, quit being such a drama queen. And you just raise your vibrational level, and then you can get guidance from Spirit.
Well, let's move into that now. How does one, first, I'd love for you to explain the angelic guidance system. How does that work? How does one have angelic guidance? To what extent do they guide them? How can they use them to help them? How can one, and then move into how can one effectively communicate with them?
Just angels or any spirit?
All of the above. And the guidance system that is with you.
Yeah. Okay. Our heads are big satellite dishes. They receive and they transmit frequencies. Every spirit has a frequency that they keep throughout all their lifetimes. Every angel has its own frequency. Every whatever has its own frequency. So think of AI, attention, intention, artificial intelligence, but also attention, intention. Your attention is on, you want to talk to whoever. Who do you want to talk to?
Me?
Yeah. Like, who's a spirit you'd love to talk to?
My mom passed away, so yeah.
Okay, so you want to talk to your mom.
Yeah.
So attention, you think of your mom.
Yeah.
That tunes your satellite dish head to her frequency.
Mm-hmm.
It opens up a two-way radio communication. It's kind of like the old-fashioned walkie-talkies. I don't even know if they still have those. And so you say something to your mom because you're tuned into her frequency, like tuning into a radio station. And then she's going to answer you. How you know that answer is from her, Lucas, is it's that first thing that comes in your head, fast as you can snap your fingers, or before, because time doesn't exist in the spirit world. Time's a human creation. So she's got your thought, whether it's a statement or a question, and she's responding to you immediately. So oftentimes people will really get hung up on, well, I'm making that up because I'm getting a thought in my head before I've even finished the first thought. No, that's coming from spirit. If you think about the answer for more than a second or so, that's your brain talking to you. Comes with practice. The more you do it, the more validation you get. The more validation you get, the more you learn to trust it. And then it's just second nature. But we all do this as little children before somebody tells us that it's just our imagination and it's not really real.
Yeah.
So satellite dish head, think of, you want to listen to country music, you're on 102.5. You want to listen to classical music, you change it to 94.7. Different frequency. Those numbers are megahertz for a frequency. Same thing with any spirit. And I think the fun thing about this too, Lucas, is that you can talk to anybody you want, whether they're attached to a body or not. Talk to spirit that's attached to a body, somebody that's still alive. You can talk to any spirit that's deceased, whether you knew them or not, is irrelevant. You just think of them, attention, intention. You think of them. That tunes your satellite dish head to their frequency, and you're off to the races.
In terms of asking those angels or guidance people for help, what's the rule there? 'Cause I think where I struggle logically in my brain is I kind of feel weird about asking for help because there's one part of me that's like, if everything is divine and magical, what am I supposed to know is good for me? How do I know that? How do I know if I'm asking for the right things? So it's weird for me. It's like, what's the wisdom in asking for help from the guidance team? And to what extent I feel like I'm being entitled for asking for certain things? How does one walk that line? How do you go about asking for help? And what's the wrong way to go about that?
There is no wrong way.
Okay, why?
There is no wrong way because it's a request. And how it's going to come in is going to be predicated on what your spirit wants to explore and experience.
Okay.
So spirit is never going to interfere with your life, but they love helping.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to say, okay, make it rain so that Lucas's house floods. But if your house floods and you're like, okay, guys, in the spirit world, I need your help. Send me the contractors that I need to help clean this up. Send me whatever. See the difference there? You're asking for help versus they're never going to do anything to you that you don't ask for because they don't want to interfere, but they're thrilled to help. I've had a couple of gals on my show in the past year. One gal's name is Perdita Finn, and she writes a lot about ancestral healing and the female energy and all of that. And every morning before she gets out of bed, Lucas, she says her morning prayers. And then she has a checklist of things for all her loved ones in heaven to do. Mm-hmm. Mom, I need you to do this. Dad, I need you to do that. Susie, can you help me with this? So she gives them a checklist. And she said everything happens that she asks for. So she asks for it and she lets it go. I've had another woman named Jean Slater who has a book out called Hiring the Heavens. And she talks about that she asks angels for things. Hey, angels, I need marketing for this project. I need help with that, whatever. And she tells the story about she had a client that she taught to do this. And the client said that one morning she woke up and her bedroom was full of angels. And the angels were saying, hey, we hear you're hiring. What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do to help you? So I think that's ancient. My family, my mother and my grandmother used to say this prayer to St. Anthony when they lost something. And here's how it went, Lucas. Tony, Tony, look around. Something's lost and must be found. Well, my grandmother was born in 1902. Mm-hmm. Her mother taught her that. She was born in the mid 1800s. Probably in the 1870s. So different cultures have been using that to ask for guidance. Certainly it's all throughout the Bible and all of the other holy texts where people are asking for help from the spirits and beyond. And that's how it works.
What's the best process to go about asking for that help? How do you
just ask?
And just do you direct your language to someone? Do you just speak it out loud? To the ether?
In your head, out loud, doesn't matter. Mm. Yeah, you can ask somebody specifically, like St. Anthony, something's lost. You can ask perhaps your mom for help. Somebody say, hey, Mom, I need you to help me. Something benign. I need you to help me find a parking space because I'm going to this restaurant. It's always hard to park in the area where the restaurant is. Can you help me find a parking space? And, normally a parking space will open up. And the more you do it, the more validation you get. And then the more validation you get, the more you learn to trust it. And then it's just second nature.
Mm-hmm. What's their vision like? What are they seeing from their perspective? From
everything and everything.
Okay.
All. That's what I've heard from Spirit so many times, Lucas, is that when it's kind of like you get an instant download when you get to heaven, it's just all knowing on everything.
If you were to synthesize all the near-death experiences you've heard about or talked to people about, what is the common experience that you have heard?
Love. Mm-hmm. That love, a feeling of acceptance and love and all of that. But there's a big difference between a near-death experience and somebody who's transitioned completely, that, doesn't come back, at least in this lifetime. And I've heard that from both. The bottom line here is love. It's all about the love. Everything is love. Everything is to share love, to convey love, to create love, to create here out of love in this incarnation.
So then what's your answer to the question of why shouldn't we fear death? And what should we do if we fear death?
Read my book, Angelic Attendants, what happens as we transition from this life into the next, because we're all surrounded with deceased loved ones, spirits, and the spirits of deceased pets and angels, and we're escorted to heaven. Everybody goes to heaven, and we're all escorted there by angels, and there's nothing to fear. It's a glorious component. It's like nothing to be afraid of with death, but I don't want to die today, kind of a thing, because I've got too much to do and I'm having too much fun. But the cultures of the world and the religions of the world, I think, have ingrained into people that there's a heaven and there's a hell. My parish priest from the altar, when he was giving his sermon one week, said, people are afraid to die because they don't know if they're going to fly or they're going to fry. And I thought that was good. I said, okay, I'm going to poach that from him. And so we're always afraid of the unknown, but we're surrounded by spirits of loved ones and pets. And as we're transitioning, as we're dying, whether that be instantly in the case of a homicide or suicide, or whether that be over a prolonged period of time, days, weeks, months, even years, we're all surrounded by deceased loved ones. I call them the Welcome to Heaven Committee. And then they're there for us when we cross over.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've experienced that. My confusion with that I'd love for you to address is, are they choosing to not reincarnate, or are they taking the responsibility now of being there? Can they reincarnate and also be a spirit guiding? My confusion goes into what choice do they have? Like, are they choosing to stay by us and not reincarnate until we're with them? What's that process like?
Well, I get, my head wants to explode too when I think about multiple realities all happening concurrently. And I just feel like Scooby-Doo and I'm going to go, huh? What? But what I've heard from spirit is that there's always a part of our spirit that stays in heaven, if you call it. I'm using air quotes for heaven and non-physical. And then we reincarnate. So again, that spirit has the same frequency throughout all of its lifetimes. So let's say you want to talk to George Harrison, the Beatle, and he's reincarnated. Well, can you still talk to him? Yeah, because you think of him and it's still the same frequency, and he's going to answer you, and his answer will pertain to all of his frequencies. So if you're thinking of him as George Harrison, the guy who was one of the Beatles, and you're asking him a question about that, he's going to answer you that way. If you're asking him something that's more general in nature, that's going to happen that way. And so he's always going to respond. And the other thing is, spirits don't have a gender. Spirits are just energy. But we assign somebody a gender based on how we knew of them when they were alive, and or based on what their name is. Because you say George, well, we're going to equate that as a male. Is that spirit really a male? No, it's just energy. But it's okay for us to think of it as a male because it's easier for our human minds to comprehend that. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Great questions, Lucas.
I mean, I'm just following my
your guidance
confusion. I'm just, so I believe in all this stuff, and I want people to believe it. And there's so many questions that are just hard to answer. Then you have the wisdom to answer them so, beautifully. And another part of this, I'm just trying to think about the person who is resistant to what we believe in. Yeah. To try and answer their questions to be more aligned with what we believe in. And one of those, their thinking is, how can I believe everything's magical and beautiful and amazing when there's so much suffering and pain in this dimension? What's your perspective on that? As to why are things so heavy here for so many people?
Because that's what they're choosing to explore and experience this round.
Can you unpack that, please?
Yeah. So let's say you've mentioned your mom passed. I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you.
And so let's say that perhaps in one or more past lives, perhaps many past lives, you experienced that too, that you lost a parent early. Perhaps you were the parent. Perhaps you were the friend of the kid who lost a parent, or the doctor of the parent who died, or the preacher or the pastor or the funeral director or the child of or the grandchild of. I mean, there are so many different perspectives, so many different ways that we can look at a similar situation that gives us more insight. So certainly as a child, how old were you when your mom passed?
23.
Okay. So as a man-child. Yeah. You were as a young adult.
I was spiritually awake, thankfully. So it wasn't a hard process, but
okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank God. Yeah, how wonderful for you.
Yeah.
So as a young adult, as a young man, losing your mom is still painful.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps you were in another lifetime where you were younger, or you were older, or
Mm-hmm.
you were 70 and your mom was 95. You're looking at the same scenario just from a different perspective. Now let's expand that out a little further. Different time, different place, different culture, different language, different set of circumstances, what's happening in the world, all of that. All of that goes into our experience, our spirit's experience in multiple lifetimes. And everything we experience goes into the collective consciousness. Using air quotes again. Collective consciousness is everything that's ever happened, ever, anywhere, everywhere, in this universe and other universes, wherever. So when you think about that, every experience that you have, every experience that I have, every experience that anybody has is a one-time event. It's the only time that you and I are going to be having this conversation at this moment in time about this topic, but it goes into the collective consciousness, and we all have access to that just by asking spirit a question, whether it's a specific spirit or it's spirit in general.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. How another point that confuses me is, why would someone choose to come here and be like a evil criminal? Like, why would a spirit want to have the experience of being a perpetuant of suffering and pain?
Like a Hitler.
Yes.
Yeah, because maybe Hitler experienced the other side in past lives.
Mm.
And he wanted to see what in the heck has to happen to somebody to have a twisted mind to do all those awful things to others.
Okay.
You know, he was exploring that. All spirits are pure love. So the worst person you can think of, let's use Hitler as an example. Hitler's spirit is pure love, which is hard for us to wrap our heads around, because we think, we hope he's burning in hell for eternity, right? Well, there is no hell, and nobody goes to hell ever, because it doesn't exist. It's been used to control the masses with fear.
Yes.
We're back to fear again since the beginning of time. So imagine that it's as if we're in a play or a movie and we're playing a part in order to experience it. When we hear actors and actresses say, yeah, that was really a tough role, because I had to dig deep to come up with those emotions. And that's why they enjoy it so much, because they get to explore different personalities and different mindsets and things within the framework of a movie or some kind of a, some other theater thing or whatever. That's what I've been told by Spirit, how this works. It's like we're all playing a role in a movie. So when somebody's dying, the maternal spirit closest to that person who's dying is running the show from the spirit world. We can talk more about that in a minute. My mother's gone. Your mother's gone. If you or I were dying, or when you and I will die, because we will eventually, our mother's spirits will be running the show. They'll bring in the other spirits. They'll bring in the angels. They'll do all of that. And so as a result of that is when I've had people call into my show, or a client say to me, my mother is the last person I want, with me when I'm dying. She was just awful. She was abusive. She was whatever. And I say, but that was the role she was playing. Her spirit's pure love. And so when you meet her in heaven, you can take her an Oscar and say, Mom, you played that role really well. Here's your Academy Award. So it's just roles that we're playing. Think of an actor and an actress so that we can explore and experience that mindset, that behavior. What's causing that behavior? What are the ramifications of that behavior?
So what are the negative consequences for taking on that role of someone who perpetuates pain, like a quote unquote villain in this dream we're experiencing? Do they experience no negative consequences in the afterlife? It just they played that part.
Played the part.
And because that part was so much pain for them in that part, I assume, like if you're someone like Hitler, you're in pain, so what?
Whether he may not have been cognizant of it though.
Yeah. Yes.
He obviously.
There's like a clean slate, no matter what part you play after the fact.
Yeah. And so That's what I've been told by spirit many times, Lucas, is that we choose what we want to come back and explore in our next lifetime or lifetimes, plural. And so perhaps somebody's explored being a villain. Let's call Hitler our villain. Somebody has explored being a villain in many, many, many lifetimes. Remember, time doesn't exist in the spirit world. So certainly it's feasible that a human lifetime of 100 years may not even be a blip on the radar screen in the spirit world. And then maybe Hitler's spirit wants to explore something totally different. Yeah. Maybe Hitler's spirit wants to explore becoming a rocket scientist or, or whatever. Or being somebody who only spreads joy and love in the world.
So hearing you say that's disparate to the usual understanding of this spirit world is that I think the common perception that I've experienced, part of the Buddhist conception in my studies, is that what you're saying isn't the case, which I'm fascinated by, is that let's say I were to do many bad things, I'm actually forced to come back and correct that. That there's a forcing, there's some deity in that up in the ether saying you have to come back and do that. And that's been the common perception for many religious texts. So what's your evidence and experience for why that's not the case?
Well, because I've talked to bazillions of spirits who've said there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad in heaven, in the spirit realm. It's just an experience. And if you look at cultures and religions and civilizations, how do they control people? Fear, right?
Lies, yeah.
We saw that with the pandemic.
Yeah, fear and
You told
lies,
me you were living in New York City, and that was a nightmare for you during COVID.
Yeah.
I live in Alabama. It wasn't really a big deal down there.
Yeah, definitely wasn't.
I mean, nothing really closed and it just wasn't a big deal. So it's all fear and control, and people have been controlling the masses with fear. That's the most powerful tool. Look at the media during COVID. The more they can scare people, the more eyeballs watch the news and are on the media, whether it be social media or mainstream media or whatever. It's all about the dollars. They get more eyeballs. They charge more for the advertising that's on there, and they increase their revenue, and it benefits them and their shareholders. So in journalism, especially, if it bleeds, it leads. People are motivated by fear. They want to know more. So it's clickbait, and it's people watching the news to find out what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I definitely haven't perfected that. I still find myself looking at, news things and seeing, like, for example, the threat of a nuke. I go into fear. The threat of AI chip in our brains leading to us being controlled by I fall into these traps. How do you not fall into those traps? How do you have faith and surrender into the potentially destructive consequences that we could potentially take?
2-minute rule, my man. We just talked about that. Keeps you out of fight or flight. Yeah. When you're thinking about, oh my God, we may get hit by a nuke. Okay, if we get hit by a nuke, is that going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? Yes or no?
Nope.
So it's a fake fear. Now, could we get hit by a nuke someday? Yeah. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. What are you doing? You're using your imagination to envision all this bad stuff that you don't want to happen, and then you're suffering over stuff you're imagining. If you're going to use your imagination to do something, imagine good stuff.
Yeah.
That 2-minute rule, Lucas, is such a key because it keeps you out of fight or flight. When we're in fight or flight, it's an autonomic nervous system response. And you're already in panic mode as soon as you go into fight or flight. So if you can stay out of fight or flight, that's the key.
Do you believe in a demonic realm and there are spirits, negative spirits, who support the experience of having fear?
No.
Why not?
All spirits are pure love.
Okay. There's not a possibility for that in your mind.
Nope. I've heard it a bazillion times from spirit. It's all been used to control the masses with fear over the millennia. All religions, all cultures, all governments use fear to control the masses. What better way to control the masses? Oh my God, there's an evil spirit in your house. I have a great story about that. May I share it?
Of course. I think I'm asking this because I've had that belief for my whole life.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to open my mind and invite in a different perspective because it hasn't got me anywhere.
No. It keeps you in fight or flight. Yeah. Which just keeps you in this tailspin. So one of my girlfriends told me that this had happened before I met her. And she said, I had an evil spirit come into my home and I forced it to leave. And I go, well, there are no evil spirits. And she goes, oh, no, this one was an evil spirit. And I'll say, okay, tell me about it. Because I can do an instant replay. Like you're watching a football game and I'll, they do an instant replay to see the touchdown or something. So, time doesn't exist. So you learn how to connect into spirit. You can see whatever you want if it's in the past or it's present. You can do both. So my girlfriend Deborah said, I had this evil spirit come in my door. And I said, well, tell me about it. And she said, there was this really scary looking being coming through my front door. And she had an umbrella stand next to her front door, like one of those umbrella can things that you put a wet umbrella in. And she said, I got my son's golf club and I was going to hit it. And I said, you are not welcome in my home. You have to leave. And I said, well, how'd that work for you? You're trying to hit a spirit, which is pure energy with no mass, with a golf club? Really? And she started laughing. She says, yeah, good point. I hadn't thought about that. So I said, well, what happened? She said, the spirit left. And I said, okay. So we went back and we talked to that spirit. First of all, what we're afraid of, we don't understand, right? If something we don't know what it is or we don't understand it, we immediately go to fear. That's what keeps us alive. It's a reptilian response that we immediately go into fear, which we go into fight or flight. And we've talked about that already. So we talked to the spirit. And what happened when I did a replay, Lucas, was as the spirit was coming through her very thick wooden front door, it distorted its image. It used to be in the old time movies where a bank robber wanted to disguise their identity. They would put on a pair of pantyhose or put like a stocking on their face, and it would distort the way that their face looked. So that's what was happening with his spirit as it was coming through this thick front door because of the density of the door. Well, so then we talked to the spirit. We found out the spirit had died. Now, this is in Alabama. So the spirit had died in the Civil War. He was a Confederate soldier. He told us his name. He told us where he was stationed. He told us all this other stuff. And he was looking for his daughter. His daughter had reincarnated as my friend's daughter.
Oh, okay.
So we got the daughter's name. We were able to corroborate all this stuff with historic documentation. Yeah. We got the daughter's birth date, her death date, same with this guy, all of that. So when my friend Deborah learned what the real story was, she said, okay, I get it. There are no demonic spirits. It's been used to frighten people, to control the masses.
Yeah. I return for me to really believe it is a question I have to that is, I believe that, of course, that there is a spirit, when I have an inspired thought to create something or channel something, it's coming from somewhere beyond me. When someone has an inspiration to do something bad or rooted in fear or to hurt someone or to think negatively, is that not coming from something? Is that all man-made?
So all man-made. It's all fight or flight.
What breeds the thoughts to create separation in mankind?
Fear.
I think it's all just man-made fear. That's crazy.
It's fear. And then, of course, you have mental illness and you have all that other stuff that a licensed professional can help you with who's in that realm, in the psychology realm. But certainly, there are lots of things that contribute to that, but it's all based in fear. Anything that feels badly is always based in fear. And our goal, if we choose to accept the mission, is to be able to discern between what's a real fear and what's a fake fear, because all spirits are pure love.
In terms of, what's your perspective on ETs?
Oh, yeah. They're all based in love, too.
Okay. There's no negative, evil ETs.
Think about this, Lucas. What do they do when they're selling, we got these UFOs that are coming and stuff. We need to increase what? The military budget, the defense budget. They use plasma energy. That's why our fighter pilots, will see like a UFO and there'll be 1 second and then the next second it'll go vertical and then it disappears. Well, we're operating off of a gravity-based system and they're all using plasma energy, what Tesla talked about. I had the late Tom Palladino on my show, and I interviewed him about this, and UFOs came up. And he explained that to me, which made total sense. And I'm using plasma energy when I'm healing somebody, when I'm working with somebody in a buffet of psychicness capacity. I can go and replay the past. I can get information. That's all through plasma energy instead of electromagnetic energy.
So what do you think the people, because there are many, many cases of people who believe they are being abducted by a negative ET or have seen reptile-looking negative ETs.
Yeah.
What do you think's going on with them? What are they seeing? If that's not true, then what are they seeing?
Well, what's happening? If you're seeing something that you are afraid of, we go back to what we've been talking about this whole time. You go into fight or flight, and your brain isn't working well. We're always going to be fearful of something we don't understand and something that perhaps we're not familiar with, whatever it is. But all spirits are pure love, whether they incarnate as a human or whether they incarnate as what we would consider to be an ET.
Okay. Okay, this is changing my worldview.
I have a quick story that's a fun one about a planet far, far away.
Great, go for it.
I had a guy call into my show, and I think we're on episode 560 or something. And this was, I want to say, episode 31. So it was really early on the Ask Julie Ryan show. And he called in and he said, "Can you do a past life scan for me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And he said, "I want to know if I was an engineer in a past life." And I said, "Okay." So I don't hypnotize somebody. I have this other technique that I use because I'm a businesswoman. Let's cut to the chase. I want to get to the bottom line. What's the answer here? And so I saw just abbreviation of this story. I saw him on another planet, and it looked like a Star Wars set to me. And I thought, oh my God, George Lucas has channeled all this stuff, when he was designing the sets for his Star Wars movies and all of that. And I got that the guy was head of the electric grid, and he was in charge. And it the Jetsons cartoon.
I know of it.
Did you watch that as a kid?
No.
Oh, yeah. Well, they had flying cars and stuff like that. And so I saw stuff like that. It looked like a Star Wars set where they're coming into a constellation or something, like a city, and they'd had high rises and they were lit up, they were illuminated. And so this guy in this past life scan was in charge of all of the power grid. And so I said to my caller who called into my show, I said, "What kind of engineer are you?" And he said, "I'm an electrical engineer. I build jet engines for GE." I said, "Well, there you go." So he was doing that kind of work in a past life far, far away. At first, I thought it was a future life. And then I asked what the year was, and I believe it was 1931 in our understanding of our linear calendar years. And I thought, oh, this is cool that it was on a planet in a different galaxy and all of that.
So you believe that our spirit per se is fragmented into experiencing various different realities at the same time?
That's certainly a thought of a lot of people have. Do I understand it? No. Is it so? When I don't understand something, I go to, is it feasible? Yeah. Will I understand it when I get to heaven? Yeah.
Okay.
And that satisfies my brain because there's no way that we can know all of this stuff based on our human frame of reference. So when something doesn't make sense to me, but it feels neutral or good, then I'll go to, is it feasible? And I'll hear a yes. And then I'll go, okay. Yeah.
A topic I want to move into now is that I've heard you talk about is the power of prayer. What's actually going on when we pray? What's the metaphysics of prayer? When I sit down and let's say, for example, I have a loved one going into surgery, to use your world. I'm praying that the situation goes as well as possible. What's the metaphysics behind that? What's actually occurring when I send that prayer out?
We're all focused on the same intention. So it's all energy. Thoughts are energy. And prayer is the same thing. There's a woman I had on my show named Lynn McTaggart, who's an investigative journalist who she's written many books, but one of her books is called The Power of Eight.
Mm-hmm.
And she divides people into groups of 8, and they focus on certain things, like they're focusing on seeds, trying to get them to grow faster. And they'll have other groups of seeds that won't have any focus on them. And she's done lots of projects with big, well-known universities and proven the power of 8, the power of focusing one's thoughts and intentions on the same target, if you will. Like, let's say you're trying to get seeds grow faster. Attention, intention, same thing we talked about a little bit ago. Where we focus our attention and intention, it has lots of power. And when multiple people do that all at the same time, it has the potential to really affect an outcome.
So if we wanted to see in the world a positive change in some direction, theoretically, if you got masses of people to pray on the same intention, you would see a change result.
Yeah, and there's been lots of research done on that with meditation. Everybody's going to meditate at noon Eastern on whatever. And when the war in Ukraine first broke out, I know that there were several of those that I saw that people were meditating and focusing on certain aspects of that for the people, let's say for the children to be able to escape or things like that. So we can focus on something, and it's always going to be the spirit on whom we're focusing. Let's say, to your example, somebody's in surgery, and we're focusing on your friend who's in surgery. Well, that can have an outcome to the point where it can affect it, but it's always that spirit's prerogative, bottom line, whether to accept that energy, that's healing energy, or not, based on what that spirit's wanting to explore and experience in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm. If you're someone who is hearing this conversation, you're noticing that your health isn't great, your mental health isn't great, you're stuck in fear, you feel ill, what are the first steps someone like that can take to start returning to homeostasis and returning to love? What's the first step someone who feels off, who feels like their body isn't working well, who feels like their mind isn't working well? What are the first steps someone could take to start inviting in the power of healing?
2-minute rule.
That's like the thesis to everything?
You can use it in every situation. It's free. It's convenient. It will give you clarity. When you have clarity, you're at a high vibration. Spirit can lead you.
Mm-hmm.
Those thoughts coming in that will give you guidance can register. Because when we're in fear, Spirit doesn't communicate on the I feel crappy channels because the vibration's too low.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the best tool that I know of to help somebody take that first step. And then they're going to take a step and say, okay, I've got, I don't know, my back hurts. And so they say, okay, is this going to kill me in the next 2 minutes if my back hurts? No. Mm-hmm. Remember, it's only a yes or no answer. No, but ... is not an acceptable answer in this game. And then maybe they're led to go look something up online. And so they read something and it has some guidance for them. And they say, well, this guidance isn't going to work because of this and this and this and this. And so you ask again, if this guidance, if going for a walk around the block, which is the guidance, I'm making this up, if going for a walk around the block doesn't help my back,
mm-hmm.
most of the time they would say, okay, so I'm not going to do that. But when they use the 2-minute rule, they can say, well, if walking around the block doesn't help my back, is that going to kill me in the next 2 minutes? No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing to remember is we're always going to get guidance that's going to lead us to something. So perhaps that person taking a walk around the block is going to expose them to something else, maybe a conversation with a neighbor, maybe something that they're going to listen to on a podcast. Maybe, I don't know, they see a billboard. It can be endless of it's a step. You take a step and then you're led to another step and another step and another step. And that's how it works.
So your thesis on life seems to be that when you're at a crossroads of something, that fear will always not allow you to find the next step. And if you can allow yourself to step back from fear, the next step is more likely to reveal itself in the process.
Exactly.
And I think one point of fear that so many people deal with, myself included, is in romantic experiences, like fearing that we're not going to find our person, or fearing that, we're not enough. Why are so many people dealing with such deep fear in romantic experiences, and how can people start to transcend that experience to then move closer to the person for them?
Attention, intention. I think you put your attention on what you want. You stay focused on that. So your intention is you want to find a partner, and your attention is finding a partner, right? Mm-hmm. And your intention is, okay, I want this partner to be fabulous in all of these different ways. And you focus on that because our thoughts create our reality, because thoughts have energy, right? They create. So when you can focus on things that feel neutral, at least, or good, you're going to create that reality. It's really that simple. And people say to me sometimes, it can't be that simple. And I say, oh, but it is. It just is. We don't come in with a set of instructions that say, okay, you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and you go to Brown, and then you're going to go to this place, and you're going to get a job, and then you're going to work there 2.3 years, and then you're going to move to this place, and you're going to do this. That's not how it works. We create it as we go.
Can you unpack that, please? Like, what does that mean? We create it as we go.
We create as we go.
That's such a hard thing to wrap your head around.
With a thought. You have a thought. I want to do a podcast.
Yeah.
All right. What's your next step? Your first thought is probably, podcast? I can't do a podcast. I don't know anything about doing a podcast. La, 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 la. Right? All down this negative spiral. Instead of somewhere along those lines, you said, okay, I'm going to look into how to do a podcast. That was a step. You were led. So you wanted to continue to create the next step. Maybe the next step was listening to other podcasts, finding out what they were doing. Certainly you were led to create this beautiful studio that we're in. Mm-hmm. So how did that unfold for you?
Well, I had to combat a lot of fear and insecurity. I deal with not feeling like I'm enough or worthy of things a lot. Yeah. And I have to constantly overcome that voice to make the steps.
Yeah.
That's my experience.
So now you have the 2-minute rule. So it's going to help it. It's going to speed it up. So I'm not worthy of having my own podcast. Let's say that was a thought. Or who am I to have a podcast? What do I know? Kind of a thing. Well, if you have a podcast and you don't know what somebody thinks you need to know, is that going to kill you in the next 2 minutes? No. Then you take a step forward. It lessens the fear enough, Lucas, that you can take a step forward. And then you're led to another step and another step and another step and another step. And that's how it unfolds. But it makes it so much more pleasant and so much more fun. And you get so much more done in a shorter amount of time without suffering, because suffering is not necessary for any of this stuff.
No.
You're using your imagination to create things you don't want to happen. Mm-hmm. If you're going to make the effort to use your imagination to create something you want to happen. It's that simple. You change what you're focused on. You want to focus on things that you're going to enjoy, things that are going to benefit you. Stay out of the weeds.
I agree with your rule, and I believe in it fully. I'm just trying to think of people where my mind goes. If I have that fearful response and I go to, I'm not going to die, 2 minutes, but the fear still persists. I can't just delete.
Use it again.
I can't just delete it.
Yep.
So your thing is
it's a habit.
Just spam it.
Yep.
Okay. And over time, that repetition.
It's a habit. And then what's going to happen is the 2-minute rule is going to be a habit. And you're going to be living a life of joy. And one day you're going to walk around and go, God, I feel great. Well, not for any specific reason, but this, I just am really enjoying life.
Yeah. I know I'm for sure addicted to fearful responses.
Yeah.
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 I don't know why.
Most people are.
Yeah.
Most people are. And then people say, no, but this is no. It's not that this can't happen. It's keeping you out of fight or flight so you can keep your clarity about you. That's the thing. We get addicted to the adrenaline hit, the cortisol release, all of that in the fight or flight response. And, somebody that's in fight or flight all the time sometimes has trouble relaxing. because they're just like,
That's me. Yeah. Thank
they're
you.
just-
You're revealing to me how much fear I live in all the time.
yeah. And it's so unnecessary and it's not fun. And we're here to have fun and create.
The only fear that's actually useful, you believe, is just that of physical safety.
Yeah. If something's going to harm you or kill you, that's a rational fear.
Mhm.
It's the only thing that's real. Because everything else we're imagining. I had a guy named John Labman on the show recently, Lucas, and he said, and I laughed when he said this, and I thought, oh my God, what a great point. He said, all thoughts about the future are lies.
Mhm.
And you think about it, they are. We don't know what's going to happen in 3 seconds. You may lose power and this ends. We don't know what's going to happen in the next second or two, let alone in 3 minutes, 30 days, 30 months, 30 years. It's all stuff we're using our imagination to envision. And when it feels bad, stop it. Because you're suffering over something that's imagined that's false.
Do you think that if you envision a fearful future in reality, you're more likely to invite it into your life?
Well, I think our thoughts create our reality. If we think that all people are really nasty in let's say in the city of New York. New Yorkers are just nasty. They're not friendly. They don't smile. They're all overstressed, all that kind of stuff. That's nonsense. There are plenty of people that are living wonderful lives in New York that are happy, that are all of that. So when you go into New York City, and I'll be there in a couple of weeks, and I smile at people, people smile back. And sometimes that person is stressed out. And when they have somebody smile at them who they don't know for any reason, for no good reason, it's hard not to smile back when somebody's smiling at you, even if you don't know them. So you go in and you go, the people in New York are really nice, and you just have a smile on your face. Guess what? You're going to find the people in New York are really nice. If you go in and you say the people in New York City are just awful, they are just cranky and crabby and blah, whatever. That's what you're going to experience. Yeah. Attention, intention.
So, as well, I'm assuming that you believe that if you live in that frequency of living beyond fear, you don't invite things that are attached to fear into your life.
Exactly.
So you kind of protect. That's like the real spell of protection.
Yeah. And I do have a romance piece of advice. May I share it?
Yeah. I'm that's my core thing I struggle with. So yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
All right.
Yeah.
So I was a volunteer sorority advisor at the University of Alabama for 12 years because I live in Birmingham. And 450 girls in the chapter, lots of drama, lots of love life drama. And so they'd tell me about it, and I'd say, and I'm going to say the same thing to you, Lucas, I just want you to remember one 4-letter word when your heart is breaking. Are you ready? Next. Who's next? Next. It's all part of the experience. When you go through being in a relationship with somebody, you find out what you like, what they like, whether you're compatible, what your shared interests are, all of that stuff. And then you decide to split ways. And we're all conditioned, you've got to feel awful for, and you don't want to go back out and meet somebody else and all this other stuff. Well, what you can do is remember that 4-letter word I just taught you, next. And you say, okay, here are the things I liked about this last person. Here are things that I want to add to those things that I like. So the next person, I'd love for them to have all these wonderful qualities about the person with whom I'm ending this relationship. And with my next person, I'd like to add these other qualities there.
Yeah.
And that's what you're going to attract because that's what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Most of the time, especially women, and you can help me on this if men do this too, but mostly women will come up with all the things that were wrong with their partner. And so I'll say to them, well, what was good about your partner? What made you fall in love with them in the first place?
Yeah.
I'll say, well, they were this and this and this and this. And I'll say, okay, what else would you like? What other qualities would you like? Well, I'd like him to do this and this and this and be this way. And I'd say, and where did those come from? How did you get clarity to know that that's what you wanted? And they'll say, because I didn't have it with my last partner. It goes back to when you know what you don't want, it helps you get clear on what you do want. And that's how we create.
Yeah, I think another piece people struggle with, that's definitely wise wisdom there. I'll use that. But also when people are single for extended periods of time and they take that extension of time to make it believe that no one wants them.
Yeah.
They're not worthy. I'm in that boat. So how does one, in that period of not being with someone, use that as a time to like have faith and trust that things are going to work out for them when all the evidence is appearing, like, no one's here?
Okay. Well, my first question to you is, what are you doing to attract somebody like that? I mean, you sitting at home waiting for somebody to ring your doorbell?
I tend to, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Cinderella's busy,
Yeah.
so she's probably not going to show up at your door with her glass slippers on. So you've got to take action, because just thinking about something and then you've got to take action. What do you want? And then you'll get guidance and you'll take a step, and then fear will come in, and then you'll stay out of fight or flight, and then you'll take another step and another step. You're invited to come to a party. And you're thinking, oh, nobody's going to be there that I'm going to be interested in, blah, 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 blah. Stop and say, what if? What if somebody's there that's really interesting? What if? What if is very powerful. Mm-hmm. And what that does is that changes your perspective. And you're going in going, it's going to be fun to see who's going to be there.
What I struggle with is when I'm at that crossroads and I want to make a decision that aligns with a path forward to a higher value, I'm kind of frozen there. My brain, I think like 80 thoughts at a second. My brain's like, I'm always downloading a bunch of things at the same time.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Because you're so smart.
I don't know how to drown out that noise that's overwhelming to be like, what? I'll be at a crossroads. I'll have like 30 thoughts come at once.
Yeah.
All these different points. For me, it's like it's so loud. How do I know which voice is the highest truth in that moment when all these things flood my brain?
So here's what you do. You preface your question to Spirit, God, the universe, all the spirits, all your angels, all your deceased loved ones, all of them. Preface it with, is it in my best interest to? ... Is it in my best interest to go to that party tonight? You're going to hear a yes or no. Again, first thing that comes into your head, fast as you can snap your fingers. Yeah. Is it in my best interest to encompasses all of the variables, all of the different scenarios that could happen, because remember, future events are fluid. Mm-hmm. So there are a bazillion variables that are going to come in to address a future outcome. So somebody that says, now, Lucas, I can guarantee you 100% that you're going to meet the love of your life at 7:15 on December 12th of 2025. Run the other direction. Because there's no way they can know that, because there are too many variables in the future.
What confuses me is my first response is often fear. It's like,
sure it is.
That's like the quickest thing for me is like the protection, to protect myself.
Yeah.
So then that's like the first instinct. I'm like, but that's not true. So it's
it's fake. Yeah. It's fake news.
Yeah. Yeah. That's often my quickest reaction.
Sure.
So
yeah. So get out of fight or flight. Take a step. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? The party's boring and you come home.
Yeah, of course.
Instead of using your brilliant mind and your brilliant imagination to envision all the stuff that you don't want to happen. You're making that stuff up. And it feels bad. You're suffering over stuff you're making up.
Yeah, well, then what I appreciate about your mindset is that you're not selling this like your individual gift, that we all have this ability within us, that each of us have this ability to tap into source and spirit. That's a universal thing.
Absolutely.
That I appreciate about you, because so many people in this space advertise as if they're special, if they got all the codes. But what I appreciate about what you're saying is that everyone has this inside of themselves, and you're advocating for a thought process that creates that space.
Everybody does. And when we can tap into that guidance, think about when you're a dad someday and you have a toddler that's not speaking English yet, and they're crying because they're in pain, or they're sick or something. And you think, oh my goodness, if I could just talk to this kid and find out what hurts. Well, you do. You just say, hey, buddy, what hurts? And telepathically, you're going to hear my tummy hurts, or you're going to hear my ear hurts, or something like that. How useful is that? If you're in every area of your life, we all have the ability to communicate with spirit. We all come in with the hardware. It's just a matter of developing it and then utilizing it and trusting it. And most children have spiritual events happen in their lives. They can communicate with spirit. They see spirits.
Well, think about how many people have imaginary friends. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And they're real. Even if the adults, I have a whole series of children's books called Angel Messages for kids, for dogs, for cats, and for truth. Yeah. And it's the children's version of the 2-minute rule is this going to hurt me in the next 2 minutes? And so it's an amazing problem-solving tool for little kids. And little kids get this because they don't overanalyze the crap out of it. They just take it at face value. But little kids, then usually around the age of 6 or 7, are told, oh, honey, that's just your imagination. That's not really true. Or there really isn't somebody standing there. That's just your imagination. Or they're told by their friends, man, you are just weird. Nobody's standing there. What are you talking about? Kids understand about past lives. That's why I wrote this children's book series, because I had so many moms and grandmothers primarily say, little Johnny came to me and said, you're my favorite mommy of all my mommies. And little Johnny was 3. And so the mom said, well, honey, I'm your only mommy. And he said, no, Mom, babies are born and then they grow up and then they die and then they come back and they're born again as another baby with a new mommy and daddy. You're my favorite of all my mommies. How's this 3-year-old know that? How does the 3-year-old know that about a past life where they can corroborate historic information that this kid can't read yet?
Yeah, there's books that showcase that.
Yeah. How does one who's a parent or a grandparent address when they're at a funeral home and they're at the visitation hours and they say, well, honey, grandma died and she's in heaven now with all the angels and with God and all of that. And little Susie says, no, she's not. She's asleep in that box up there in the front of the room. How do you explain all of that? Well, you explain it that they're a spirit and they can communicate with them. So many spirits come to visit their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren from heaven. And the child will tell a parent or a grandparent, well, Grandpa Bill came to visit me last night and we played trains. And he told me about the time when his granddad bought him his first locomotive in 1930 and it was a Chief Rider or whatever. And Grandma still got that locomotive toy train from when her late husband's grandfather bought it for him. And you're thinking, okay, Grandpa's been dead for 20 years before this kid was ever born. How does this kid know this stuff? That's how. We all have the ability. The other thing that's really important too, Lucas, to remember is when we go to sleep at night, our frequency resets to the same frequency as spirit. So our brains relax and it's easier for spirit to communicate with us because our frequency goes back to the factory preset level of spirit. So if there's something that's really bothering you and you're looking for guidance, or if you're in deep grief, excuse me, and you want to communicate with a loved one, spirit, and you're having trouble doing it when you're awake, just ask them before you go to sleep. Hey, what is it in my best interest to go to this party Friday night? And if it's a deceased loved one, say, hey, Mom, blah, 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 whatever you want to ask her or say to her. And they're gonna communicate with you sometimes more easily when you're sleeping because your brain's relaxed and you've reset back to the spirit frequency. So you're on the right radio station where they can communicate with you. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Have you experienced that?
Experienced what?
Like your mom communicating with you in a dream, or you've asked.
I have had my mom communicate with me. I've had higher beings, interdimensional beings talk to me in my sleep. I don't remember it too well, but I'll get a glimpse of it.
You'll get a download off of it.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah. I've struggled honestly to really tap in my psychic skills, which is something I have to definitely work on.
Because you got to stay out of fear.
that's definitely the block. I'm always in fear, which is the sad reality.
Because spirit don't communicate on the I feel crappy channels. But the other thing about dreams that's so cool is when you have a dream and it feels like it's super high def. The colors are more vibrant than you've ever seen, and the senses are heightened. And it's like if you're hearing music, it's just the tones are so much better. That's a visit. That's how you know you've had a visit. And spirit will come visit people in their sleep. And I've had people throughout the years say, God, it was so real. And I woke up and the hair on the back of my neck and my arms was standing up. And I'll say that was a visit. That wasn't a dream.
How do you know when it's a visit versus unconscious symbolism?
Because same thing, what I was saying, it's more high def.
Okay.
And you'll have a physical reaction. Yeah. And that hair standing up on the back of your neck or on your arms kind of a thing, what that is the vibration is so much higher than our human vibration that the body's sensing that. And that's why we have those goosebumps.
Yeah.
That goosebumps or hair standing up kind of a experience.
Yeah. For the final portion, do you mind if I tap into some channeling stuff?
Sure.
What do you feel like currently is on the plate for society? What are we being asked to go through to usher in? What's the current state of collective consciousness? What are we moving through currently? What are we ushering in through that moving process?
I think that the frequencies are raising a lot in our human experience. And I see a lot of shattering happening. You think about you've got to shatter the old in order for new to come in.
Yeah.
And there's a fun story when I was your age and I was dating and I was single. I had a friend who was 20 years older and she used to tell me, that guy's Kool-Aid. I'd say, what the heck does that mean? And she'd say, well, Kool-Aid tastes good, it smells good, it looks good, but it's not champagne. So that guy's Kool-Aid. How do you expect your bucket to be filled with champagne if it's full of Kool-Aid? You got to empty the Kool-Aid first. You've got to shatter the old in order to build new. You want to build a certain house on a piece of property, but there's a house there. You got to tear down the house first before you can build the new one. And I see a lot of that going on in our current society. I think that spirituality is becoming much more common in the zeitgeist of our current experience. I see that people are moving more away from organized religions and cultures into more of a spirit-based experience. They're curious. They want to know. And I think a lot of that, Lucas, is because the people who were inundated with all those old beliefs are dying off. And so there's less of that going on.
Yeah. My question to that is, or my fear goes, sadly, is that I maybe have this irrational belief that we have to suffer deeply to then change the pattern. How true is that? Like, how much do we need?
Not.
Okay, so how explain that. How can we envision? I think in my community, the people envision like this positive, beautiful heaven on earth, and they believe that it has to get so bad for us to lead there. Why is that irrational, and how can we believe in and envision a world that gets better without having to get worse first?
It's fake news.
Okay.
Why would you believe that something has to be really bad in order to be good? That's craziness. I mean, that's crazy thinking. Why would you believe that? Because you've been taught that. But if you want to create a piece of art, well, you create something that you think is beautiful. You don't want to create something that's really awful first in order to get to the beauty. That's crazy. It's nonsense.
How can we create space for the shadow to arise without having it manifest? You know what I'm saying? Like, how can? Because I think there's so much darkness that we can't see that has to become visible. How can that become visible if it doesn't manifest as something bad?
That's just somebody's philosophy that's been, implanted into your brain. That's false, in my opinion. I work with people all the time, and we do part of the healing process is called the energy field membrane healing. And there's always an emotional event that causes an energy block, a la Eastern medicine, acupressure, acupuncture, clear the block, get the chi to move, that whole concept. that's always in place that over time, when other emotional energy piles on top of it, causes a rupture in this membrane that's the container for the energy that makes up the body and the spirit. And that we're always leaking power before any kind of medical condition arises. So as part of the healings that I do, I'll go into that terror hole and I'll be shown a scene in my mind's eye of here's where it was, here's what happened. If it's past life, here's where it was, here's when it happened, here's a little bit about it. So what I find is that when we go to the source of where did that energy block begin, unlike psychotherapy's philosophy that, now, Lucas, we're going to talk about your life, and it'll be like peeling an onion a layer at a time. Certainly, there's always room for psychotherapy. Mm-hmm. I'm a businesswoman. Let's just get the onion out by the root. We don't need to relive all the drama and trauma. It serves no purpose. We get it. We identify it. It's removed. It swipes out all that other drama and trauma in one fell swoop. It's gone. Mm-hmm. Energy-filled membranes, body heals because it's working on full power.
Yeah, you're completely shifting the way I perceive things. And I believe you. It's just like I've had this maybe false belief that to clear the rotten core of the onion has to have space to come up and manifest and breathe and do all these things.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah.
I've worked with tens of thousands of people over the years. Not necessary.
Yeah.
It's like they used to, when somebody had certain diseases, they put leeches all over them to suck their blood because they thought that would be good. It used to be, lots of different philosophies of things, of how we used to do things. And we don't do them anymore because we know better now.
Yeah.
It used to be that kids were paddled or spanked or, they had to go out and they had to get a tree branch on which that person was going to hit them with it if they did something wrong. Well, the American Academy of Pediatrics says never hit a child, ever, under any circumstances. We know better now. Old philosophy, outdated, misproven, disproven, whatever the word is. Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind if I ask a
fake news?
Personal question?
Fake news, sure.
So I experience for some reason so much doubt, so much fear, so much insecurity that it blocks me from understanding what wants to be lived through me. What's going on here? What's my purpose here? What am I being asked to communicate? I often can't tap into that because I'm facing so much fear and insecurity. Is maybe an answer to that would be useful. It's like what wants to be created and lived through me that I'm not seeing because I'm stuck in fear.
Helping people realize that fear is an illusion, unless it's going to hurt you or kill you. And also to help people get in touch with their spirituality. Mm-hmm. Certainly, that's why you're doing this, is letting people know, okay, this spiritual thing is available to everybody. You can tap into it in a nanosecond. Everybody has the ability, and it's going to help you enhance your life. Mm-hmm. And the fear thing is all an illusion. And you can get guidance from spirit. You can get guidance with other. You can create the life that you want.
Do you think all the fear that I have is a manifestation of past life experiences?
Oh, certainly it plays a role. Yeah. I think losing your mom at an early age. Yeah. I don't know what your background is.
I did a lot of drugs.
Okay.
Drug addict, not much love experience as a kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that all is part of the equation as well. Mm-hmm. And now that you're sober, I'm assuming you're sober. Yeah. Now that you're sober, congratulations.
Thank you.
What most addicts, it's been my experience, and I have addicts in my family. Mm-hmm. It's been my experience that they're very, very spiritual beings, and they're very interested in spirituality, but they don't know how to access it.
Yeah, well, the feeling they're seeking is divinity. It's the same feeling of
That's right.
Transcendence through alcohol, drugs. What I was definitely doing was this need for spirituality that I wasn't getting.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're finding other methodologies and modalities to feel that same divine presence without injuring yourself and your body. Because it's not kind of like, you can rebuild. Like if you tear down your body enough, a lot of the time you can't rebuild it. It's too much. And that's okay if you choose to do that in this lifetime, because, you'll come back and you'll explore it some more in your next lifetime. So it's not a big deal, even though we think that it is. in this lifetime. But when you look at the whole picture of how many lifetimes you've led and how many lifetimes you're going to lead, I mean, obviously you're the whole package. You're brilliant, you're kind, you're handsome, you're the whole package. This is a matter of beliefs. And I can say this, I could be your grandmother, right? This is a belief system that's false that somebody has taught you, and you're exploring, okay, this doesn't feel good. There's got to be more to the story. How do I create the life that I want and feel good in the meantime?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
You got this.
I hope so. I mean, I think I've been hitting like a point in my career, or in my life, where I was facing so much insecurity and doubt, and it just like my experience in life isn't matching it at all, and I'm doubting myself constantly. I think, you and I met today out of like a
fluke.
You were meant to go on a podcast, and a friend of mine, and he's sick, so he came here, and I just feel like I'm being asked right now to really jump over this illusion of fear I've been addicted to and believing for so long, and just thank you for giving me that gift and that vision for what I believe to be. I've been getting chills the whole episode, so just thank you very much. And, one thing I also wanted to mention is that you offer, beyond the podcast and stuff, you also offer books and a book that can help for free, help people really integrate and download this information. So how does one get that book and learn more about your process, which is amazing?
Yeah, askjulieryan.com. We do my call-in show every Thursday night at 8 Eastern. And it's a blast. People call in from all over the world. I never know who's going to call, and I never know what they're going to ask, from the buffet of psychicness. Mm-hmm. We could talk to your dead grandma. I can scan your cat. We could do a past life thing. We can do any kind of advice, from spirit, whatever. So that's really lots of fun. And then we do interviews too. 7th book is coming out soon, and that's called Angel Messages for Your Life's Journey. And it's messages of serendipitous things and really magical and angelic experiences that people can share. So that's fun. And then for my free book, it's Angelic Attendants, What Really Happens as We Transition from This Life into the Next. And I think it's important to remember, Lucas, that nobody ever dies alone, ever. We're all surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. And so the lots of great stories in there. University-based research corroborates that people at the end of their lives, 90% of people who are dying see the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets. 90%. Yeah. So I love it when when science catches up to woo-woo, because woo-woo's been around a whole lot longer. So if you want a free copy of Angelic Attendants, what I was just talking about, just go to julieryangift.com, julieryangift.com, or go on askjulieryan.com, and there's a button there on the homepage. And we'll send you a free audio book and digital version of Angelic Attendants. I think this stuff should be taught in the schools. Yep. People are so afraid to die. Do you have time for one other quick story of how that came about?
I got all the time in the world.
Okay.
No worries.
When I was led to write Angelic Attendants, I was with my mentor, and she was doing a healing on me. And when I'm with her, I'm laying on a massage table, face up. The work that I do is remote. It's like 99.999% remote. So my deceased loved ones their spirits are on either side of the table, and I can see him and she can see him. Even my dog, Katie, who's in heaven, Lucas, and her little paws are up on the table, and she's standing on her hind legs. So one day this spirit of a dead pope shows up. And I said, well, who are you? And he said, I'm Clement. And I said, I never heard of a Pope Clement. And he laughed, and he said, I was number 6. I said, okay, how may I help you? Kind of like, why are you here? Mm-hmm. And he said, you're supposed to teach the world what happens when somebody dies. And I said, I'm not doing that. I'm a businesswoman. People will think I'm nuts. And he said, yeah. Just get on with it, because it's been so bastardized and people are so afraid to die. And it's glorious. Not today necessarily you want to die, but there's nothing to be afraid of. And he says, and you know that because I've seen it, thousands of times when I've helped people transition. So I said, yeah, you got the wrong girl. Sorry. So I go out to my car to leave, Lucas. It's just for kicks. I did an internet search on my phone of Pope Clement VI. Come to find out, this guy was in office during the Black Plague when 2/3 of Europe died. And he's best known for his prayers for the dying and his prayers for the dead. And I thought, oh, for God's sakes, Ryan, you can't make that up. And so that's how all of this came about with that first book. And, I have millions of stories like that of where I'm led. And early on, and he's still my main spirit guide, and early on, I would argue with him. And I'd say, I'm not doing that, or no, that don't make sense, or whatever. Now, after all these years, it's just, I don't argue with him. I don't know why in the heck I was arguing with him anyways. I mean, he's dead. He has access to universal intelligence, right? So I don't argue with him because he's always right.
Yep.
And the guidance that I'm getting is always divine guidance. And so I learned pretty early on not to argue with a dead pope who had access to universal energy.
Wise choice, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, askjulieryan.com, julieryangift.com will send you a free digital and audiobook download. Just say you heard me on Lucas's show, and it's a gift that is coming from Lucas and from me just for listening to the show.
Well, thank you very much.
You are most welcome.
Even me, myself, I've gained a lot from this that I will take forward for the rest of my life. Thank you.
You bet. My honor.
I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to watch more content, please click this video right here and don't forget to subscribe right here. Thank you.